Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of hashtag Blind Talk. I am Murray Elbourne, and I'm here with my co host.
Tammy.
And today we're going to talk about an important topic that we all kind of have some experience with. And what is the topic, Tammy?
It is fake it till you make it.
Right. So today we're definitely going to talk about situations where we have said that we can do things or have seen things or uh, all of the above when we really haven't. So
Right.
situational blindness is what I like to call it. So just for those of you who didn't catch episode 1, we'll just quickly introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about our backstory. Tammy, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Tammy. I am from South Carolina. I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa close to 11 years ago now. And I have been on a journey of learning how to navigate losing my vision. I am enrolled in a clinical trial as well. And we can certainly touch on that at a later time, or you can follow my page for updates about that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I live in South Carolina and learning how to do life differently these days.
Yes. I am Murray, originally from Sydney, Australia, um, and was born with scarring on both corneas of my eyes, and so classed as legally blind or less than 10% vision from birth. But during that period, I also developed cataracts and went virtually completely blind until 28 and had cataract surgery and got my initial vision back. And then about 5 years ago, I had a minor stroke and lost vision for 6 months after that. And so have experienced pretty much complete blindness at different stages in my life as well. Yeah, last week we talked about social isolation and especially for people with blindness and low vision and how that impacts our lives. Just want to thank everybody for the amazing feedback that we got. And just so many nice well wishes and saying that they really enjoyed the podcast. How did that make you feel after episode 1, Tammy?
Oh, I enjoyed it so much. I loved all the feedback, the people who tuned in and gave all the feedback that they did. I certainly appreciate it. It was a very good episode. I felt like that covered basically how we feel about things and how losing our vision can make us feel alone at times, but also with our community of blind talk, letting others know that they are not alone. And that is so key in navigating this journey. So I really enjoyed discussing that. And I've had people to reach out to me this week that, it really touched them in ways to know that they are not alone. So that made me very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And big shout out to Mandy, Janelle, and Jesse for some funny and very insightful feedback that they gave us through their videos as well, amongst a lot of other people. But those three really stuck out to me of
Yeah,
making the
same,
biggest difference. So thank
same.
you to everybody who took the time to do that. So today, fake it till you make it. I think, I'm sure that Tammy and I have some real life stories that we'll share. But also, you've shared some things with us during the week about things that you've done or you're experiencing that are typical kind of fake it till you make it stories. And the whole premise of this is that also, although I've been legally blind since birth, you adapt to your environment, but also importantly, when you continue to lose vision, it's a lot harder to adapt to your environment. And so, therefore, you have to make drastic changes. And that transition period where you're adjusting is often very difficult, and you're coming to terms with what that is internally. And you are masking so that you don't want to have people know that things are changing at a rapid rate for you. And so then you try to be a people pleaser, I guess, and mask so that you don't have to deal with it too much. Um, Miss Tammy, do you want to start by talking about some of those situations for you?
Sure. I have found when looking back now at things that I did, it's very different than how I do things now. And that comes with a lot of soul searching, a lot of dealing with it. So in the beginning, I wasn't sure. I was diagnosed on a routine eye exam. I was completely caught off guard when I went in for what I thought were just glasses to learn that I had retinitis pigmentosa. So upon the genetic testing that I had done, we learned the mutation and kind of how things would go for me. So initially, it was very scary. It was shocking. It was all the unknowns that I faced. So I didn't know how to handle it myself. And until I got a grasp on that, I didn't feel like I could tell others what I was experiencing because I was noticing some vision changes. I was noticing that I had never been able to see in the dark. However, I didn't think anyone could see in the dark. So looking back upon diagnosis, looking back previously to years before that, the signs were there. I just didn't know that that's what it was. So once I learned a little bit more as to how my situation was going to go, and there's no clear answers, there's just educated guesses across the board every person is different, every mutation is different, every body is different. So I had to learn how to deal with it before I could tell others. So when I started putting myself more out there at work, in situations and that sort of thing, I noticed that somebody would, I worked in a hospital. And so a nurse across the room would be doing something or hanging a medicine or something like that. And they would say, gosh, the heart rate has certainly changed, and look at that pressure. And I was across the room and I'd be like, oh, yeah, oh goodness, yeah, that's definitely a change. I couldn't see it. I literally couldn't see it. So I, of course, would then have to make my way across the room and where I could actually see the monitor to see what they were talking about. So I I would always kind of agree,
Yeah.
I guess you could say, with whatever. And if someone, showed me something on their phone, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And knowing good and well, I really couldn't make it out. Glasses or not, it was just how my disease process was going at that time. So of course, you just kind of fake it. Can you see that over there across the road or across the lake, when we're out
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
I, I couldn't, but I'd be like, oh yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's
So you were doing it with people that were close to you, your husband, your family
for
type of thing,
sure.
as well as obviously in the professional environment. And that is a lot of pressure on somebody, right?
Mhm.
Because it
Yes,
reinforces what you don't see 10 times anything else that you notice. And, then to struggle about it and kind of fake that you can see it is really challenging. I think, in a work environment where you might not have had, and I've heard other people talk about this, I think I heard Blind and Board talk about this week, and also Mandy, that if you don't have assistive technology or adaptive equipment in the workplace, you are working 10 times harder than anybody else to be able to, see. And obviously, you talked about that, especially as a nurse, reading medicine bottles and pill bottles and then blood pressure. And there's so much visuals that go on as a nurse that are
exactly.
pretty vital. And so, but I know just in a corporate environment, when I wouldn't have my Zoom text, which I only use double the size for text, but double the size makes a big difference if you don't have it. And you really take a lot longer to do anything. And that's, I coach students a lot with blindness and low vision in blind schools and in mainstream schools. And I have a lot of people who haven't come to terms with vision loss, or even if they've had it since birth, still haven't come across, because that peer group pressure to not be different to anybody is so strong that they'd
Exactly.
rather struggle through without any assistance
Hmm.
than to be able to be in a situation where they can do things much easier and quicker. And that in itself is a huge societal problem, because we're made to feel like we can't be different, or there's, you can't be stand out, or you're judged for that.
Right.
And that's a huge problem. I know someone who's very successful with Stargards. He's in his 40s, and he still hasn't come to terms with any part of his blindness. But just a great guy, very, owns his own financial management company, owns his own record label, like very successful, but just hasn't come to terms with it at all. Has
Yeah,
just found ways around life
exactly.
to be able to do it. um,
Right.
and it's challenging. It's emotionally, it's mentally exhausting for him to do it that way. And I'm sure for everybody who has their own story, and again, everybody's an individual, right? And we want to say
Right.
that here is everyone will go through different iterations or versions of what this is.
Hmm.
But how do you come to terms with it? And then, what are some of the little things you can do to minimize that emotional trauma that you have to face when you are faking it?
I think that what you have to do initially is come to terms and accept it for yourself. That's very much key. A lot of people are not comfortable without an added issue. So they are not confident enough. And my problem was I was probably overconfident in what I did for a living. I know that I was very good at what I did. I knew that I was not only working at the hospital, I was teaching first and second year students that were in respiratory therapy school. So I was teaching them at the hospital. So I had students with me 2 days a week. And then it evolved to when the instructors at the college were needing to be out for a while, I would be asked to go and teach those students certain courses. Um, so it made me feel good that I was given those opportunities because I knew, for lack of better terms, I knew my stuff, and I knew I was confident in that. So I didn't want anyone to doubt my ability. My eyes were broken, my brain was not. And I love to say things like that sometimes when people see me navigating using a mobility cane, they immediately want to give me a wheelchair.
Right.
And I'm like, my legs are not broken, my eyes are, so I prefer to walk, but thank you. So those type things, I didn't want to happen. I didn't want anyone to doubt me. I didn't want anyone to think that I was less than. So for me, it was an internal struggle that I had to deal with. So I read some self-help books. I actually went to therapy for a little bit to learn how to deal with it myself, and talking with others also. There are community support groups that are out there, and I found a lot of comfort in those people, knowing that they too at one time were where was they were where I was at that time, and they had evolved forward. So I think accepting it for yourself, and then letting others truly know, because I think they want to help. They don't know how to because they don't understand how you see. So if we're out on the lake, say on a weekend, and there's a gorgeous boat that's going across the lake. If someone says, God, that is gorgeous. Do you see that over there? And I'm like, 10 years ago or 8 years ago, I'd have been like, oh yeah, God, I love it.
Right.
Now, if I say, I can't see that far, then they will tell me and describe it to me so that I
Yeah.
can picture it in my head. And I find that helpful. So I think it's letting others in after you have acknowledged it yourself. And people go about it in many different ways. Therapy for me was key, and also community support groups and reaching out to others.
I think that's a good point, and again, it is going to be different for everybody. But after my stroke in 2022, I was very angry that I lost my vision because I'd lost my vision completely at kind of in my 20s and in my later teens, and I'd struggled with it for a long time. And to get my original vision back, although it was just 10% to nothing, is huge
Right.
from a usable vision point. And then to be comfortable with that, to be a CEO of a company and then lose your vision again, man, I was really angry for that 6 month period. And I went to counseling as well. And, it's a reinforcement message that stays with me now, that I hadn't changed, right? My vision had changed, but I hadn't changed. I was still the
Right.
same person who I always was. I had the
Mhm.
same knowledge. I could have the same conversations. I could network the same. I could think strategically about the business and, be the person who I wanted to be. And, I come across TikTok videos all the time now of people who have lost their vision. And one lady who I put up on my story yesterday, I didn't actually know her. And this is the first post I've actually seen from her. But she was saying, I used to be so confident. I used to be so confident all the time. And now I have no confidence. And I asked her a question and she hadn't responded yet, but I put it up on my story because it's a great discussion topic and I'm very interested in what people think about this is what made you so confident as someone who could see as opposed to someone who's lost their vision?
Right.
Because were you confident because you could see? Is that the only reason that you had confidence? I don't think so.
Right.
But is the reason now you don't have confidence is because now you can't see?
Yeah.
That's the sole reason, right? And like you were saying, you really prided yourself on being a professional. You're a teacher, you had a wealth of experience and obviously studied and researched the topic well. And you did not want to be seen as incompetent.
Exactly.
Well, you
Exactly.
have the same knowledge as someone who is losing vision, but you didn't feel like that, right? Because
Right.
you have to do things differently. One of the things that I tell students a lot in my current program here in Las Vegas and other programs that I do is one, you need to define who you want to be to people. And
Mhm.
you really need to focus on that when you're having vision loss or you've had loss of vision or you're blind, and who do you want to portray yourself to be? What's your defining you speech? What's your elevator pitch to somebody that talks about you? I get a lot of students from schools and they talk about their blindness all through their resume. And that's what defines them is their blindness. And we've talked about this, off the podcast, but
Mhm.
it's so relevant when you kind of do this fake it till you make it stuff is you are who you are, right? And the ultimate thing is like now what you said is you say that you can't see something and they describe it to you. I'm
Right.
driving in the car with my wife a lot and I'll just tell her things that I see because I don't expect her to really understand or know like what my vision is and what I can and can't see. And so as we're
Right.
driving, I'll just like look at signs and I'll say, oh, that's there. Just so she has a bit of an understanding a little bit more about how I see. And when we first met, I was definitely masking. She flew out. She's American. I was in Australia. She came and visited Australia, and I kind of showed her around. And I was nearly like I was 6 months away from cataract surgery, so I pretty much had 1% vision, and I was totally faking it until I made it there. I did not want her to know the level of vision loss that I had, and all I pretty much said to her was, "Oh, I struggle a little bit on curbs and in the dark. So if there's like stairs that are coming up, that don't have rails, just let me know." But I
Yeah.
didn't use the cane, which is so stupid. And it's just this pride thing that you have that
It is.
you don't want to be judged or seen as less than, but that's by other
Exactly.
people, right? Like, so there's two sides to this. You don't want to be seen as less than by other people, but you also don't want to be um, different to anybody internally. And it's like makeup, putting on makeup during the morning,
Mhm.
getting a beauty routine, getting a spray tan, whatever you do to make yourself feel good, it's
Right.
the same thing, right? Is that we all
Exactly.
have an insecurity about everything in our lives, and we live
Mhm.
in a society these days that has this perfect expectation of who you are, what you look like, what you do, and anything that's different
Mhm.
from that is like this big thing, right? So
Right.
that's where I
Exactly.
think like Blind Talk as a community has been so great for
Yes.
people. And last night, I'll give you another instance of that. I came across KK's post about her daughter,
Mhm.
inheriting her eye condition, and you could just see, it was a really tough moment for her. But when I read down into the comments that the community left for her, you were one. Um, it just reassured me that we are in the right place at the right time for people, and um, you have to go through it to really understand it. And that's the challenge because like our partners and our families, our friends, they haven't, and so they don't understand.
Right.
And
Exactly.
as much as we want them and need them to understand, it's such a difficult position for us to be in. So, I'd
It
love to
is.
hear like how you felt when, you're in those situations where, gosh, the last thing you want to do is explain it to someone or you want to be
Mm.
different from somebody and the emotional baggage that puts on you as a person and the exhausting feeling that you have from doing it.
I think as it became more evident to me, and I don't know if it was the timing of it all, given my mutation, I knew that it was usually diagnosed midlife, and then, by the age of around 50, you had lost a good bit of your vision. So I felt almost like on a ticking time clock, and that within itself is scary. Um, I didn't, I was so focused in putting all my energy into being able to make myself see because I couldn't.
Right.
I didn't feel like I had the energy to explain to others what I couldn't see. So for me, it was easier just to go along with them. And by the end of the day, reflecting back on the day, you sit there and you're like, I missed so much of the day. And it was because basically I wasn't true to who I am. I wasn't true to what I was seeing and not seeing. If I had told someone earlier in the day that I could not see the monitor across the room, that I couldn't see where they were placing the line, they would have assisted me more than likely, but I didn't have it in me to ask.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just did not feel like it was, I didn't want anyone to think differently of me. I didn't want anyone to doubt me. I didn't want to make it, I felt like if I said it out loud, it made it more real for me. And how could I make it more real for me when I really had not even fully accepted it or knew anything about it? So, I find in somebody else commented, I think it was Mandy this week, that said that her biggest fear is disclosing that information when she's going to apply for another job.
Yeah.
And I find that that is the case in a lot of people. They don't want to they don't want to be doubted. You get me the job. Let me land this job based on who I am and what I know and what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
And then let me tell you the areas in which I am having issues. Some may say that that is deceptive. Some may say that, hey, they completely understand doing that. And then in the workplace, you have to then battle when you need certain things and accommodations, fighting for those things to be done so that you can do your job better. So all the way around, it's pretty exhausting. And I honestly, I did see that her video about her with her daughter having two children and having one positive and one not. I can't imagine that feeling for her. So I honestly, all I could say was, I don't have any words for you right now. I'm just offering you a hug from where I am to you, and I'm wrapping my arms around you right now because I don't know what you say to someone. There's nothing that you or I or anyone can say to make that hurt better for her.
No, absolutely.
So just being there, I think, and offering support is huge.
Yeah. Um, I do two podcasts, one with you and one with Elizabeth, and we did one yesterday about dating on the spectrum and of blindness and all that comes with that. And just the same things, right? Is that emotional masking of what you can and can't see, the preparation that goes into going to a restaurant. You have to try and find photos of the restaurant that you can look at so you can know where things are and know the
Mhm.
layout. Heaven forbid you've got
Right.
to meet somebody there and try and find a person in a crowd, right?
Right.
uh,
Exactly.
the menu. There's just so many things that people just don't get when they ask somebody with low vision to go somewhere and do something, right? Is like
Exactly.
the level of everything that you have to do to feel comfortable and confident to be able to go out and meet somebody in a general place is challenging that nobody else will ever understand. And I
Exactly.
think that's difficult as well for relationships, right? Because
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
crave understanding and you crave somebody to understand what you're going through, but it's challenging to do that. And, I often ask Tammy, my wife, I said, what do you think that I see? And she's like, I have never really thought about it. I know that you tell me sometimes and I have a general understanding. She said, but I don't really have any idea how you see. And,
Mhm.
it's difficult for partners, I think, spouses and partners to be able to really understand that.
Right.
And the challenges that come with that can be, really isolating. Again, back to what we were talking about last week, because you do have to mask to the person who's closest to you or, should be
Right.
closest to you. And that's really challenging as well, right? Because then you
It
feel like,
is.
well, there's nobody, right, that's really going to get what I have to do. So
Exactly.
it's yeah, that emotional strain and again the process that we go through in just missing little things, and sometimes we make it up, right? So
Yes.
someone about blindness and low vision is that if you can't see it, you're imagining it, and then when you're imagining it, um, you may or may not have a good idea about what it looks like. I have some friends who used to have vision as kids and then went blind at maybe between 4 and 6. And
Mhm.
one good friend in particular, he's in his 40s now. And I said to him, like when you think about blue sky, do you still think that you have a good understanding of what a blue sky is? And he's like,
Right.
well, all I have is memories, right? So it's whatever that memory mutates into that
Mhm.
is how I see. And I remember like when I lived in Sydney, we used to go to the bar and there used to be like slot machines. And we always used to play this machine. It was kind of like, I think it was called the Three Musketeers or something. And each reel, when I was going like virtually blind with 1% vision, I had an idea about what that reel was. And then when I got my cataract surgery, and got 10% vision back, I went back and everything was completely different to how I imagined those reels being, as an example. And so,
Exactly.
that's part of faking it till you make it, right? Is you just make things up in your mind about how
Mhm.
you see things, and that's how you see things.
Exactly. And the brain also fills in a lot because, I get asked all the time when people are curious about, well, how exactly do you see? So I try to explain it to them there's not a, you can ask like certain apps to do a simulation of it and that sort of thing. And it seems like everything wants to make my central vision around the right degrees that I see, which is, 8 to 10,
Yeah,
but everything else around it is like blacked out. And I don't feel like that's accurate. And I don't
right.
know how else to explain it because my brain, when I
Makes
look
no
at something,
difference.
yes, I
Yeah,
feel like I'm seeing the whole thing, even though
right.
when I'm looking at a person, I will see their face and maybe, the top of their neck, and that's about it.
Yeah,
Um, Everything else is not blacked out. So it's so weird to try and explain because your brain does fill in things and certain things that I remember seeing, even 2 years ago, I'm sure look way different than what they actually look like. Um, for a fully sighted person, I have nothing to gauge it by because I see how I see.
yeah,
And with talking about relationships and that sort of thing, I also think that people are afraid to disclose that to someone else because they don't want the other person to think that they are incapable of doing things. Also, what the future looks like. And none of us, ever want to feel like we are a burden to anyone, no matter what the deal is, right? No matter if you're,
absolutely. And nobody likes to feel pity either, right? Everyone
no,
hates to
no,
feel pitied. And there's no reason to, feel pitied a lot of the time, but that's just how we feel, right? It's like, okay,
yes,
we're missing something. And so we do see like care and concern. And obviously, like we've heard the stories about, oh, let me pray for you type of thing. And
right,
it's like pity, right? And so none of us
right.
like to feel that. Um,
Mm-mm.
and, to be capable, I know totally blind lawyers, I know totally blind, professionals, um, who in their other parts of their life, function very normally with adaptions. I talk to students and now adults that I work with about having a toolkit and
Mhm.
utilizing that toolkit and what's in your toolkit because if you want to be able to function in society, you need to be able to have assistive technology. You need to be able to
Mhm.
have training. You need to be able to have these things, And in the last couple of weeks, I've talked about vocational rehabilitation services in states and working with counselors. And now a lot of states have this order of selection that's coming in because of budgetary constraints. And
Mhm.
they're taking off new services or withdrawing new services for people who haven't registered yet and focusing on
Mhm.
existing clients. And people need to be aware of that. It's not told
Right.
to anybody, but if you're missing out on services and they have this order of selection, which they do in 14 states currently, you're not going to get those services anymore. So when you
Right.
call up and you want orientation mobility or you want a piece of assistive technology or you're a student and want to go to college and people on the existing caseload are going to get those services, but you are not. And so
Right.
people just need to start to be aware of that.
Mhm.
And it's a scary thing because everybody needs those things, to internally to cope before you even think about unmasking to everybody.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it's a challenging situation that I just want people to be aware of. And
Mhm.
my company works with the state agencies for the blind in there's three real age groups. There's 0 to 13, which is kind of called explorers, and then there's pre-ETS, which is pre transition services, which is kind of 14 to 21 or 14 to 22, and then 22 plus, which is vocational rehabilitation. And so depending on which age group you're in, depends on what services and what they do with you. But I was talking with Angel, and she lives quite a long ways from the city where these trainings happen.
Yes.
And
Right.
so it's impossible for her to pay, and there's no paratransit or transport that she can catch other than a taxi or an Uber, which costs, a lot of money each time she has to
Mhm.
go. And so
Right.
there's people in rural areas, and there's a lot of people in rural areas because
I
sometimes
am
that's
too.
more affordable, right, to be able to
Right.
live for someone
Right.
than having to pay big rent in the city. Um, but they're isolated, right? They're socially isolated.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
are isolated within their vision, and they can't get services because there's nothing in those rural areas without them traveling.
Right. And I talked with her this week as well, in depth for probably an hour. Um, my best advice to her, I also am, I'm very rural area. We don't have a traffic light here. We don't have public transportation. We do not have Lyft or Ubers here, um, where I live. So I'm in the same situation as her. And when I first began working with vocational rehabilitation here in my county, um, I explained to her, and she was aware because she is in the same county as me. Um, I can't get there, like every single time you need me to come. I cannot because I don't have a way to get there. If we're going to make this work, I need you to come here. And they were more than accommodating to be able to do that. But had I not voiced myself to her to let her know this is what I need from you,
Yeah,
she would have just set me up to come into the office, which is a good 45, 50 minutes from here.
yeah.
So I had to tell her, and they did. They sent a lady out here to do every bit of my training, and I was very pleased. I actually have a Zoom with them on Monday afternoon to kind of go back over and rehash the last 2 years that I've been working with them. And I'm looking forward to that as well.
I have to say, working with the agencies for me and my business has been good and bad because you definitely can fill a void as a vendor for agencies who don't have people with lived experience to be able to deliver services. And I do feel like having services delivered by someone who's actually been through it does
Right.
give you an advantage. It certainly has given me an advantage to be able to work with the agencies and work with clients.
I'm
But
sure.
uh, I think, like something like orientation and mobility, it's really cane training, right? Is essentially what it
Mhm.
is. But
Mhm.
what I think is even more important is that second and third layer of self-confidence when you out and about. And, I have a student that I've put on my TikToks a couple of the times, and he has really bad double vision and depth perception challenges. And,
Mhm.
we don't even talk about depth perception a lot of the time, but that's equally as challenging as having
Mhm.
low vision. And,
Yes.
especially when you're navigating stairs and curbs and just like, he hasn't any confidence to be able to do those things. And when you're cane training, you're walking, you're teaching cane technique, but you miss a lot of things that give you that extra level of confidence when
Right.
you're orientation mobility training. And I recently put up last week a video on a tennis court where I had my team navigate the court and understand spatial awareness. And so those things are going to help you in orientation mobility, but they're not taught in
Mhm.
lessons, right? How do you learn those things? And so I think, we need to address and modernize service delivery models here in the United States because they are very institutionally based modified. And so that's a thing that I think is really important as well. And that's not helping people not fake it because they're not taught about how to advocate for themselves in a workplace to be able to get
Right.
assistive technology. They're not
Mhm.
advocating or they're not taught how to explain their vision loss and how they see in the workplace or with friend groups, or social groups. And a lot of the time, the government's not going to even worry about that because it's only about getting you a job. Uh,
Right.
and they don't
Right.
care about how you are socially or your emotional well-being. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
let's get you a job and
Get
let's
you to
teach you how
work.
to walk with a cane,
Right.
And so it's very basic stuff. And so
Yes.
that's where I get frustrated with the system a little bit because it's not enough. It's not enough for people just to be able to be taught how to use a white cane or
Right.
how to get a job somewhere. And I never talk about getting a job to clients. I always talk about building a career because I
Right.
want to see the most in them and I want them to feel like they can do something that they're really passionate about and interested about. And that's what you said is like, well, how could I'm sure you've looked into ways. So, but maybe even like
Definitely.
teaching again, or teaching
Yes.
vascular, and being an online teacher or a tutor or something like that,
Right.
might be an option for you. But if
Right.
nobody ever tells you that that's an option, and they say, well, you could be a call center operator, you could have a work from home job, you could go and work in a grocery store or a fast food restaurant, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's where it's at right now, right?
Right. Right. Right.
I hate that. And I think that people just deserve so much more and are capable of so much more.
I agree.
And as someone with vision loss, have things like um, the caring factor and the understanding factor of uh, understanding real challenges in life that can be. There are a lot of people go into social work for that reason, right? Because
Yes.
they've been
Yes.
through this cycle of pain and losing their confidence and understand what that does to someone. And then if they've come out the other side and okay, they're going to live their life and do it, they make really great counselors because of that apathetic understanding of what someone's going through. And
Exactly.
sorry, I said apathetic. I meant empathetic.
Empathy. Yeah. I
Apathetic's
totally
a
get
different thing
it.
altogether.
I totally understand what you're saying. And I think that would, that's where, for me, I can say I would have to, if I did any sort of counseling or and things like that, it would have to be on my terms because there's a large gap in what is needed and what is given as far as your state. In my state, for sure, there's just, it's not enough.
Yeah,
And I would be so frustrated by that that
yeah,
I would just, for me, I mean, even given my healthcare career, my absolute dream would be to open up a clinic where I would give medical advice to people. Um, and help them navigate getting their medicines straight and things like that. So that for me is something that I have always wanted to be able to do, helping others of course, but on my terms, as
yeah.
far as not relying on someone else to give me what I need to get that done. I
Sure. And
don't,
you're
no
doing that.
boundaries.
I mean, you're doing that with your neighbor as an example, and
Yes, yes.
helping him with his diabetes. So, like, we do these things. When I teach, I'm just about to go to Seattle next week and teach 18 students, and we're going to go to Microsoft and learn all these adaptions, which is a fantastic opportunity for these students. But
Yes.
um, that takes a lot of work to put together a week-long workshop during spring break for 18 students. That's just a drop in the bucket, though, right?
Right.
Although it's making change for those students, there's hundreds that aren't going to that, that are missing out on these opportunities. And so I just,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's always a challenge. You're never going to fix everything for sure, but
Right.
I think how do we start unmasking? Like, what are the steps that you've taken to make that decision to be able to say, okay, I'm going to stop saying I can see something, and be authentic and say I can't. What are the steps for you in doing that?
For me, it was initially accepting it for myself and knowing and coming to terms with it. So after I wrapped my head around it, after I knew that, this was happening, didn't matter whether I liked it or not, it was how I was born. Then I had the mindset of, well, people really do want to help. And if I want to still be me, and be outgoing and go and do things and participate in things, then I need to let people know what I need from them when I need it. And I found that to be probably one of the best things that I did for myself because I did become very isolated. I became not interested in going and doing anything. For one, I didn't want to explain what I couldn't see. And for two, I didn't want to have to explain what my diagnosis was and have to rehash it all over again because there's so much more to me and people automatically want to, oh, I'm sorry to hear about, so and so.
Yeah,
And that pity factor comes back in and I can't stand that.
yeah,
So I didn't want to go through any of that. So fully grasping it for myself and then learning that others really do want to be there for me and they do want to help me. I just had to let them know what I needed. You can't fix something you don't know about. And so it was baby steps in the beginning. And, I would go somewhere with friends and I would say, I need you to let me know if there's a curb going up into Target,
Yeah.
as we got out of the car. And so then it became more natural for me. And then it became more natural for them to just say, hey, TJ, look out, step up right here. Or ask me, in dim lit areas, can you see okay? What do you need?
Yeah.
It just became easier. Once I finally spoke it out loud. But speaking it out loud makes it real. And that's something that I had to come to terms with being okay with.
Yeah. And I think for me it was different because I always had low vision, but growing up as a kid, I used to play cricket and rugby and do all the thing, ride my bike and, do everything that every other kid in the street did. Um, and you just adapted, right? And so then now as an adult, when I think about, okay, I need the large print program, I need, certain stuff to be able to be the person that I want to be, I've worked out what my toolkit is. And, I come at it a little bit from another view as well. I really do feel like I have low vision to be able to give back to people. And that's something that's
Same.
always kind of sat with me and is part of my faith, and helped me come to terms with the fact that, okay, this is my situation, but I can help so many more people because of my situation.
Exactly.
And that is a really driving factor for me, is that's why I'm vulnerable. That's why I like to talk about it. That's why I don't, I've got over the hump of, okay, well, this is what it is, right?
Right.
And I'm really focused now in this community and in my work life, but also in my mentorship life of mentoring younger people with blindness and low vision to really be able to be themselves and find themselves and focus on themselves rather than the vision loss. Because if you only focus on the vision loss, every day is going to be so much worse for you.
Right, exactly. And I'm with you on that. That is what I feel like. And I did see a video this week, and I kind of touched on one aspect of it yesterday about the anger phase that you go through. And that's something that I would love to speak more about, but we do go through that anger and the why me. And now my motto is why not me?
Yeah.
Why not me? This happened to me for a reason, and there are no mistakes made in how we are made. So I fully believe that I was given this for a reason. I may have not been able to continue with my bedside career, but what I'm doing now, I feel it just as fulfilling and it's my purpose. So I, I, I fully now think everything was planned out for me. This is how it should go.
Yeah.
And why not me? I'm strong. I am very talkative. Let me help others by talking to them and helping them navigate things that they are struggling with, and that brings me a lot of joy to be able to help others like that.
Now, I just want to also point out, don't get us wrong. We're talking in a positive light about how we've come to terms with it.
Hmm.
I think, I don't want to talk for you, but I'm sure that, you'll have your own take on this. But there are days where I don't want to get out of bed. There are days that I am depressed. There are days where I don't want to deal with it, right? And
Yes,
that is 100% normal. And what we need to also do is stop beating ourselves up for that. Because
exactly.
if you have low vision or you don't have low vision, you have those feelings. They are part of being human and they are part of everyday life. And we all go through those emotions and we all feel like we have to be strong and perfect and that person that everybody can lean on, well, that gets exhausting too, right?
It does. It does.
Is like, man, there are days where I just want to turn this thing off on my phone and
Yes.
say, I do not want to talk to someone today. I do not want to post. I don't want to deal with someone else's problem. I just want to watch baseball, or I want
Right.
to, eat
Mhm.
Cadbury cream eggs, or it's
Exactly.
whatever you want to do that makes you feel good about you, right? You need some time
Exactly.
for that as well.
Right. Right.
Man, that is an important message. If you don't get
For
anything else
sure.
out of this podcast episode, please get that there is nothing wrong with feeling like, man, I want to detach myself today and I
Exactly.
just want time for me. We do not put enough time into our own selves.
Right. Exactly. And it's okay to feel like you just want to veg out all day. And,
Yeah.
I don't want to, sometimes I don't even want to talk to my family,
Yep.
like I just want to be, let me be, whatever
Yep.
that looks like.
Yep.
And, but I don't, it's okay to be like that. I don't want to stay there for very long.
Right.
Um, let me have my day, and tomorrow I'll be right back at it. And I think everyone should be okay with taking that time for themselves. It's not being selfish at all.
Yeah. And you shouldn't have to necessarily explain yourself
Explain it.
for wanting
Right.
that or doing that. I think
Exactly.
we spend too much time worrying about what others think, and sometimes
Mhm.
it's what you need, right? And being in tune with what you need, so
Right.
that you don't drive yourself into the ground to the point where
Mhm.
it gets too bad to come back from, and you're
Right.
just faking it every day and struggling through. Like that's
Exactly.
that's exhausting, and you're
Yeah.
gonna go downhill quick if you do that. So being in
Yes.
tune with how much you can cope with and being okay with that is important.
Right. It is. And finding hobbies for yourself that you can, try to, you may or may not be able to do it, but try it. Why
Yeah,
not?
that's a big point, and I'm glad you brought that up because you have to find fun in life, right? You have to find
Yeah.
something that you can do that takes your mind off all the other crap that's going on in your day to day.
Mhm.
And when you find that thing, hours just fly by, right? Most
Exactly.
recently for me, it was writing a book and just getting lost in that book, developing characters. I rewrote that book 6 times, right? And it's sitting there. I like, well, I want to publish it, but it was the actual process of just writing it and doing it that I've always wanted to write a book that
Right.
I really enjoyed. And before that, it was this game called Civilization that I used to play for hours and hours and hours that used to just take me away from the day to day. Or it was
Right.
baseball or cricket or sport, that I used to watch, whatever your favorite TV show. Um,
Exactly.
I don't care what it is,
Mhm.
music, for some people, music, and I love music as well. And you can just listen to music. The other night, I stayed up for 3 hours and thought, I really don't like the 90s, but there was we were listening to a radio station here in Las Vegas in the car. There was a 90s radio station. I'm like, actually, there's some pretty good 90s songs. And then I just got lost in Apple iTunes and searching 90s music. And I did it for like 3 hours and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay,
Oh my goodness.
probably should go to bed now, right? But
Yes.
it's those
Yes.
things that take you out of all the feelings and all the
Right.
stresses and the exhaustion that you feel, that you need to come to terms with and understand what is that thing for you.
Exactly. And I find for me, it is challenging myself. I am the way that I am made is so probably different than others, but if you tell me that I can't do something or put something in front of me that might challenge me,
Yeah.
I won't stop until I've done it.
When we,
So
when we
ugh,
went back to Australia last year, I said to my wife, I'm like, we need to do something that we normally wouldn't do.
wouldn't.
And so we decided to climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And it's right next to the Opera House. If you've seen Sydney, you'll see the big bridge where they let off the fireworks on New Year's Eve. And it's a big thing. So we went and climbed the Harbour Bridge, right? I don't recommend you do that with a torn labrum in your hip. That's not smart.
No.
Yeah.
Mm,
But I did it, so I'm not very smart. And But it was the challenge of going out there. And when I was walking out, when you walk out on the landing before you start the climb, I was like, oh man, I'm freaking out. Maybe I should just go back in. And I thought, what are you doing? Stop thinking like that. This is going to be a great experience, and you need to challenge yourself and do this. And you'll feel much
Exactly.
better. And I loved it. It was fantastic.
Yep. And once you get there, you realize I did it, and it's so rewarding, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, that's exactly right. Do challenge yourself,
Hmm.
and take yourself out of your comfort zone. Sometimes we think, oh man, there's no way I can do that. And then we go and do
Exactly.
it. We've all talked about like if someone's never driven, I've known lots of people who have never driven
Hmm.
because of their vision loss. But in
Right.
Sydney, we used to have this driving day at a racetrack, and a car club would come in with dual controls in the car, and people would get to drive around the racetrack. And that was amazing for people, like,
I'm sure.
and just to feel like what it's like to drive, right?
Yeah.
And everyone kind of takes it for granted when you're doing it and you're
Right.
driving. But if you've never done it, man, it's the best experience ever.
Exactly. Exactly. That's awesome. I love that idea.
Yeah, we should try and get that happening here in the United States. I know that
For
um,
sure.
Future Shock Foundation is working on their Disneyland Day, which is pretty exciting for White Cane
Yes.
Day, October 15th at
Hmm.
Disneyland in
Hmm.
California,
Yes.
which is really cool. I'm definitely thinking about getting to that. But I think something like a driving day would be really fun.
Oh, yeah. I love that idea.
Yeah. Tell us your ideas. What are things that you've always wanted to do that you just haven't or kind of didn't have the nerve to do? I know two totally blind brothers in Australia, and they have scuba dived, they have climbed Mount Everest, they've jumped out of a plane, they've done everything crazy, and they just want to, break barriers. Like that's what it's about, is just breaking barriers. And of course, there's fear factor involved in doing all that stuff.
Right.
I don't know how fun some of that sounds, but
I want to skydive. I will tell you that that is on my list to do.
have
And everybody,
you
I've
been
never done it.
to or have you heard about an iFly center? Have you ever heard about iFly?
I don't think so. Is it a simulation, I guess, of it?
Yeah. So you get
Yeah,
into a chamber and they
right.
put like a airplane engine underneath the thing, and you fly up in the cylinder,
Mhm.
and it simulates kind of skydiving. I
Right.
took a workshop that we did in Seattle a couple of years ago, and I took a whole group of teenagers to do that, and they just loved it. It was
Oh,
amazing.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to do it. And my daughter and I actually talked about maybe doing it for one of her birthdays. And so one of these days I may get brave enough to bite the bullet and get us tickets to go do that.
Yeah. Maybe have a couple of drinks before that happens, huh? Ease them
Definitely.
a little bit. All right. So, any last messages?
I think we've covered a lot, and I just want to hear from others what they think, and the instances that they've faked it till they made it, and know that my inbox is always open.
Yeah.
I hit me up.
As is mine, and we really enjoy the interactions that we got from
Yes.
episode one. Episode two should be up hopefully by 6 o'clock Eastern tonight. So if you come home from whatever you're doing on a Saturday night or you didn't go out, tune in. We'll be on YouTube. You can go to the Ameribility YouTube channel and search hashtag Blind Talk episode two. I'll also put up a QR code for that episode on our TikTok pages.
Perfect.
Miss Tammy, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend. We're
Yeah.
uh, 4 days away, 5 days away from the start of
Yes.
the baseball season, where your Yanks
Yes.
travel out to
Yes.
San Francisco.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And I'm fighting the urge to get a plane ticket. I can tell you that.
I will tell you, I've had a lot of interest for our fantasy baseball league, and so this
Awesome.
weekend I will be sending a link for people to go and sign up for the league, and we will draft before Wednesday night.
Awesome.
So I hope that everybody who wants to play fantasy baseball with us this year in the Blind Talk community Inbox me if you'd like to be part of the league.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a lovely weekend. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Hang on. I need to say bye.
Bye.